Please be seated. Ever the caretaker, a woman of grace whose life embrace was so powerful, whose spirit was so strong that even now, concerned about the brokenness that you feel, worried about the family she so loves, she's trying still to tend and take care of you. And so the poetic sentiment of Mary Lee Hall, speaking Jeanette's heart, I think says it all. If I should die and leave you here a while, be not like others sore undone who keep long vigil by the silent dust and weep. For my sake turn again to life and smile, nerving thy heart and trembling hand to do that which will comfort other souls than thine. Complete these dear unfinished tasks of mine, and I perchance may therein comfort you.
Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim shamayim va'aretz Aitin lomot raglecha al yanum shomrecha Hinei lo yanum velo yishan shomei Yisrael Adonai shomerecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam.
Like those words we just heard sung, in these moments we turn to the words of the psalmist who thousands of years ago cried out as well with the full array of emotions that we experienced this morning. And Psalm 15 in particular could have been written for your Jeanette. Listen. Adonai, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. We share in one more passage from the book of Psalms, the 23rd Psalm, which has been a source of comfort, not just for Jews, but for people of all faiths throughout the ages. I'll read a little in the Hebrew and then invite you to join me in the English if you're familiar with the words. Adonai ro'i lo echzar bino deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleni. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
The poet Emile Oren's words seem to have been written for our farewell this morning. The poet wrote, "This old, old world is a dreary place for the person whose past is a frowning face, who looks for the sordid instead of the bright, who sees but the labor and worry and strife instead of the glory and sunshine of life. But for she who possesses the saving grace of a laughing heart and a smiling face, who sings at her work and laughs at defeat, who looks for the good, the bright, the sweet, who cheers on all others by word and by deed, this world is a pleasant place indeed." A life-affirming positivity that underscored her life purpose, a natural grace she exuded, a kindness she carried, exceeded perhaps only by her endlessly caring heart. Jeanette was the ultimate caretaker of her family, of course, her extended family, of friends that she treated like family, and almost anyone in need of nurturing or nourishing. And because her spirit was ever optimistic, her approach so authentic, her resolve unwavering, Jeanette helped the sun to shine. So on this day, when a world without her feels more than a bit overcast despite the warm weather, our lives darkened by her absence, we must know somehow larger than life, Jeanette's presence remains. Celebrating her 89 years, the way she lived, the way she loved, whenever we remember, that love remains. Born in New York City, Jeanette grew up in Brentwood, an only child, and leaving home at 16 after finishing Brentwood High to venture out and find her place in the world, she soon found herself in nursing school up in Valhalla. So the story goes, it may be apocryphal, but I believe it, helping one of the medical students doing his post-grad work there put in an IV. The connection was clear, as were the fluids in the IV, I'm hoping. So one thing led to another, and from August 1957, you, Lloyd, became a couple. 4 years later, married at Central Synagogue in New York. Settling into, was the apartment on 87th? Was I right, 87th, or was it a different apartment? 37th and 8th, you moved up, in essence. Life was full with you working with your father in family dentistry practice, Jeanette, a dedicated nurse. And yet as kids came along, Michelle, and then anticipating Joe's arrival, as Jeanette was wheeling Michelle in the stroller, after a conversation with another mom about the need to register her 1-year-old for kindergarten, she knew it was time to get out of that intense Manhattan parenting mindset. And since a friend and fellow nurse also expecting were moving to Larchmont, the two of you followed suit, settling where you could afford a home, a lovely place that checked off all the boxes except for a garage, on Langdon Lane in Harbor Heights. Michelle and Joe, your mom was there for you, growing up in more ways than you can mention, creating a home where family was foremost. Each of her kids could thrive. Michelle nurturing in you an independence to do your own thing and always to be your best, knowing she was always there to help. Still, as you grew up a bit and let your parents know you were not headed to medical school, they did have some slight concerns, like you would end up living on a park bench. But ever supportive, appreciating your love of languages, your mother believed in you, knowing somehow you would succeed. And you most certainly have. Joe, of course, your mother believed in you too. Given the LD label when you were a kid in school, young, your mother worked tirelessly, arranging outside testing, helping you to reintegrate into mainstream learning, and even picking you up several afternoons a week after school to drive you to special tutorial in Scarsdale. But true to form, making it fun, stopping at Walter's on the way for a special snack. As you put it, Joe, she made it a party rather than a chore every trip. There was no drama. She just expected me to succeed because she knew you would. Michelle and Joe, your mom knew what was really important in life and stayed true to those tasks, true always to herself and true to you, her kids, to feed her family, thus weekly Sunday dinners from childhood days that continued throughout the generations. Brad, eventually with you getting the nod, wasn't easy to become head chef. Jeanette, ever true to form, to get out there on the court for a game of tennis she loved. And though it was totally her thing, Michelle, athletic as she was, you always obliged, knowing how much it meant to her. As Joe noted, Michelle, growing up and into yourself, you became so much more than a daughter for her. From manicures to Pilates to just being together. You were for your mom a treasured friend. And what your mother inculcated in you both was an acceptance of all people for who they are, celebrating diversity, which she so loved about Mamaroneck. As you mentioned, Joe, to never disparage anyone's work, whether they picked up garbage or sold shoes or were trying to cure cancer. Each person was to be afforded the dignity they so deserved. True to her essence, leading with kindness and care, Jeanette's goal was to extend that sincerity of heart to all. And though she did not always succeed, as she herself would say, God's made millions of people and hasn't made one perfect person yet. When it came to her grandkids, however, they were as close to perfect as you could get. Evan and Josh, Jacob and Sam, your grandma adored you, delighted in just any time she could be with you together. Being the local grandkids, Evan, Josh, you got a daily dose of life with your grandma. There was never a school show, never a game, never a party. She was not present. From the time you were little, her presence was paramount, in fact. A hands-on grandma, to say the least. With Mom working more than full-time, she was there for you at formative moments, teaching you how to swim, helping you to learn to play tennis, how to ride a bike. And it didn't have to be a Sunday dinner for your grandma to feed you with her special brand of goodness. So too for you, Jacob and Sam, as the Virginia crew. Either your grandparents would come down to spend time with you, or you'd have special time here in Mamaroneck and Larchmont with them. As you described it, Jacob, it was like a break from real life. As grandkids who lived far away, we were spoiled, and we got the best of everything. You remember walking with your grandma into Beach Point. You couldn't get 5 feet without another person stopping to talk to her. Everyone loved her, as you said. She was a celebrity, or as I would say, the unofficial mayor. What she modeled was a magnetic presence, people drawn to her because she truly cared. Brad, as I'd likewise venture to say about you, with your unimaginable health challenges over the course of some 16 years, Jeanette was very much there, not alone to drive you to appointments, but often serving as your medical language interpreter. A past surgical nurse supervisor at NYU, she was well equipped to translate what might otherwise in an appointment be missed. And though so many acquaintances considered themselves her good friend, with a close-knit circle of friends she kept over decades, 40-plus years celebrating New Year's Eve with 5 of the same families. Jeanette was a friend, a caretaker, a sounding board, a confidant, a tennis partner you could truly count on. And as for friends, even more so for family. Joe, when you were in hospital up in Massachusetts, she was there. When Jacob, you broke your leg in New Hampshire, Grandma came. When Lloyd, your mom, took ill, she went to be there. And without ambivalence, Jeanette cared for her own mother her entire life, even when her mother, I think in her 70s, decided to move back to be with family in Ireland. So Lloyd, you and Jeanette went over to Ireland to ensure that all would be taken care of for her. The bonus was meeting the Irish extension of the family and reconnecting, Josie and John becoming so close, creating yet more surrogate grandkids. Caring so deeply as she did, you could not help but connect and love her. Evan and Becca, what joy it would give your grandma to see the love you share in starting your lives out together as a couple, especially with the inimitable model of marriage that she left. For Jeanette's heart was filled by a singular life love. Lloyd, 62 years, 66 all told of being together. You were in so many ways a model of what a marriage might be. Never a cross word, as you said, an innate respect for one another, giving each other space to each do your own thing, yet nevertheless you loved to be together, to listen to music, or when she dragged you to be on the tennis court with her, or when you early on, Lloyd, wanting to learn to sail with a wife who did not like the water, that's putting it mildly, convinced her to overcome her fear and learn to swim. And from then on, she never missed a chance to be with the family out on the boat, of course, with her flotation belt, always. The two of you knew how to compromise, Lloyd. Or more accurately, you trusted each other so completely that you learned to love what your partner loved. At the heart of it all, even beyond the common goals you shared, was a love that linked you heart to heart, swept up by her life enthusiasm, enlivened by her energy, her passion. Jeanette made life an adventure. A love, Lloyd, that will fill your broken heart all the days you live. As her love still fills the hearts of all whose lives she touched. Lloyd, I think you said it best. If Jeanette were a Native American, her name would be Straight Arrow, because Jeanette was a straight shooter. With her powerhouse of a presence, you always knew where you stood. For speaking her mind, she always told the truth. So this last wish comes from her heart. Jeanette's candor and care speaking to you, her utmost hope. That you get up every morning and keep on going. That you do all you can to give and be your very best. That you lead with kindness. That when someone else is in need, you be there with care. And above it all, that you take care of this wonderful family, especially her beloved Lloyd, and be there for one another. For as you do, Jeanette's love will ever live on. So may it be. Amen. I'd call on her niece Margot and then her grandson Josh to share.
Margot Landa Keelhorn. This is my daughter Erica. We represent two generations of Landas, and we're also the Michigan branch of the family. Bear with me, my eyes don't work very well, but I really want to share some words. I fell in love with Jeanette the minute that Uncle Lloyd brought her into the family. She's been the most important woman in my life since the age of 10, since I was 10. Almost like a fairy godmother. She filled the heart of a very lonely little girl with unbelievably unconditional love, joy, and friendship. I'd like to share my gratitude today for this amazing gift. Thank you, Jeanette, for being my irreplaceable aunt, mother, counselor, advocate, confidant, camp director, and loving best friend. Thank you, Jeanette, for always being there for others, no matter what was going on in your own life. For celebrating joy together so joyfully in good times. And for supporting us, for sharing your unlimited energy and zest for life. For supporting us all with Uncle Lloyd through some of the bad times. For stepping in with Uncle Lloyd on behalf of our parents to get us through the past 30 years. For enveloping my family in your arms, and for being the most loving great aunt that anyone could ever ask for. For introducing generations to the Fantastics. She took every one of us to see that show and instilled a great love of theater in us. For showing us with Uncle Lloyd that the meaning of committed love, lifelong partnership, and harmony in marriage. Our lives will never be the same without you, but we will always be the better every day because we had you. Thank you, Uncle Lloyd, for bringing Jeanette into my life and for sharing her with us all. Thank you.
So I want to begin by thanking everyone who's here today, who came from near and far. It means a lot, and it makes a very difficult time much easier. To begin today, I'm going to read something that my brother and my sister-in-law Becca wrote, who are across the world on their honeymoon in Japan right now, and Evan, who is on Zoom right now. I love you. I know how much you would have wanted to be here, but take your time to grieve and enjoy the rest of your trip. To our grandma Jeanette, it's difficult to articulate your impact, but suffice to say, two of your biggest contributions were love and joy. From our infancy, you emitted a deep warmth that made us feel special, cared for, and cherished. Over the past 3 decades, that warmth was manifested in countless hugs, gifts, trips, and intentional appearances. It is difficult to think of a time you were not present. When I was a toddler, you braved the early morning cold water to teach me to swim, yelling, "Big arms." During one trip to the Dominican Republic, you got us out of bed at midnight to go swimming and made Grandpa procure late-night snacks. You were in the first row at every school event, soccer game, and even hosted my bar mitzvah. Together, we conquered the tennis courts in the family doubles tournament, and you took us to just about every U.S. Open and even Wimbledon. Eventually, you helped me move into my college dorm, sat at my graduation in the rain, and welcomed my wife Becca as a granddaughter you loved deeply as your own. You made sure that we stayed connected to our past by taking us to Thurles in County Tipperary and valuing everyone there as close family. These memories of warmth and joy are not uniquely mine or Josh's. Your constant positivity, love of life, ubiquitous smiles, and unapologetic greetings made you incredibly magnetic, popular, and admired. While Becca and I are saddened that we can't be there today in person to commemorate you, we take solace in knowing that your memory is eternal and that we are immensely grateful for having had the opportunity to call you Grandma. We aspire to follow the example that you and Grandpa set for a long, happy, and joyous marriage. Love, Evan and Becca. Now, forgive me, I'm not as concise as my brother. I'm going to be a little bit more long-winded here, so bear with me. How do you possibly eulogize someone who meant so much to so many in such a short amount of time? You don't. It is a continual process that occurs through laughing, crying, sharing memories, and leaning on family. There are two impulses that came over me when I learned my grandmother had passed. One was to grieve, which everyone should do in the ways that they know how. The other was to take this as an opportunity to celebrate life, a life that had such a profound effect on so many. It's hard to know just how many children and grandchildren are truly present here today. Sure, I can count out the ones related by blood relatively easily, but that's not how it worked with my grandma. She had a funny way of making everyone who crossed her path feel like family. She picked up grandsons number 5 and 6 in Jeremy and Eric. She picked up a whole gang of extra daughters through her tennis clinics at Orienta Beach Club. In fact, I don't think that it's an exaggeration to say that she was truly Orienta's grandmother. Every child in the neighborhood knew that they could walk up to the door of 728 Walton for a hug and one of her signature Tootsie Rolls. A perfect example of the effect my grandmother could have on people was the relationship she formed with one of her caretakers, Leonard. When Leonard began working with my grandparents a few months ago, he and my grandma became fast friends. When my grandfather was ill in the hospital, they would eat dinners together, watch movies, and talk for hours. He affectionately began referring to her as Mom. We had gained a family member, and for the record, I always thought our family full of New York Jews could just use a little splash of Jamaican. On Wednesday, in the aftermath of the news that she was gone, Leonard and I hugged together and we cried together. He had lost a mom, I had lost a grandmother. Speaking of the relationship she formed throughout her life, what an amazing thing it would be to find love like the love my grandparents shared. You see, they didn't just finish each other's sentences. They could communicate through looks. Looks that said, I need a cup of tea and a cookie. Looks that said, it's time for a walk down to the club. Looks that simply said, I love you. Grandpa, I know very well that the void left by the loss of Grandma can never be filled, but we will get through this as a family and make sure that every day that goes by, you know just how loved you are. My grandma had many sayings. She would say things like, act as though you were dining with the Queen, or instruct us to say, I've had ample sufficiency and any more would be super abundant. May I please be excused before we left the table? But my favorite saying of hers was always, slay the dragons. No drop-off at school or camp or baseball game was ever complete without hearing that phrase. What does it mean to slay the dragons? It means turning childhood adversity into love. It means playing tennis well into your 80s against people half your age. It means anything in life worth doing is worth overdoing. The last few months have been undoubtedly difficult, and some people deserve acknowledgement for their Herculean effort. My mom, my Uncle Joe, my Aunt Debbie, you've all shown great strength in a time that has required you to put aside your lives in order to take care of Grandma. While the time my grandma was in hospice was trying for many, it was also a blessing. It was a blessing because during this period, she had the amazing fortune of seeing all the love she had poured into the world be reciprocated. She was constantly inundated with calls, visits, food deliveries, flowers, cards. You'd have a better luck getting a sit down in the Oval Office than with my grandma. If there's one thing we can all take solace in, it's that there was never any doubt in her mind that she was loved. What does it mean to die? Sure, there's a clear-cut answer to that question, but I choose to explore an alternative. My grandmother may no longer be physically with us, but there's no doubt in my mind that she will live on. I had the great fortune to be able to express this thought in a letter I wrote to her back in January. I concluded that letter with this thought. I want to say this. When you are gone from this earth, you will live on. You will live on through the massive network of people who have been lucky enough to know you. You will live on through every dish I cook, because without you, I never would have discovered my love and passion for food. You will live on through Evan and Becca's kids, Jacob and Sam's kids, and you will live on through my kids. No child of mine will excuse themselves from the table without declaring that they have had ample sufficiency, and any more would be superabundant. No child of mine will refuse to conquer their fears, no matter how big or small they may be. And most importantly, they will be obligated to slay all of the dragons. Your influence will transcend generations. I'm sure of it. Thank you again so much to everyone who came out here today. And I ask that if my grandmother had any impact on your life, that tonight you raise a glass in her honor. Thank you.
So many of us, have Jeanette moments. Must have been 4 years ago. She was in hospital for something, and I was very concerned and found out through the channels and went to visit her. I brought her cookies, and I wanted to just leave them and do a little blessing, but she made me sit down on her with the bed, next to the bed, on the bed, and she sat up. She wanted me to eat a cookie. I was trying to explain it's not on my diet. I can't have a cookie. She made me take 2 cookies with me. But she turned it around to try to ask me about me and about my kids and about, she was fine, even if she wasn't. It was about how I was doing and how my family was and how the temple shouldn't run me ragged. That was the direct quote. Her care, her spirit, her spunk, her heart are with us. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a minute and to see her well. Maybe it's on the tennis court. Maybe it's at the club. Maybe it's around the table or in the kitchen. It's probably with Lloyd. Hear her voice. Feel her presence. Feel her love. And remember.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we love. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember
After our service, the interment will be at Mount Eden Cemetery. Family will have their official Shiva on Sunday at 728 Walton from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. Everybody's, of course, welcome. Around 3:30, 3:45, we'll do a memorial service to say Kaddish and then memorial prayer for Jeanette. We rise now for the memorial prayer.
כנפי השכינה עם גרושים ודהורים כזור הרקיעים הזהירים את נשמת רבקה בת אברהם ושרה שהלכה לעולמה ברחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים בצרור החיים את נשמתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
Compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our loved one, Jeanette Landa, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. The eternal God is her inheritance. May Jeanette have a rest